Hello and welcome to Gapeys Grow Room. Today is a big day. It's seed starting day. It's the beginning of February, and that is usually when I get a lot of my seeds started for the season. I'll be starting tons of seeds over the next couple of months, but today is the first of the seeds. I've got everything laid out here that I'm going to be starting today. I've got some flowers, some herbs, some greens, and I'll be showing you everything that I'm going to be starting today and how I start them. I'll be putting up some channel markers for each one, so if you want to skip to anything in particular, you can go right to that section of the video. Before we get started, I just wanted to show you the little mise en place that I set up to get everything ready for the seed starting. We've got all the trays that we need, all the labels are labeled, and I did use my new garden marker here that I got from Greenhouse Megastore, and it seems to work pretty well. So I got the seeds laid out, and we've got a container here of seed starting mix. My favorite seed starting mix is Jiffy Organic. I've been using that for years, and I've tried other brands, but nothing compares to that one. Before we get started, I wanted to show you the seed starting mix. I did pre-moisten it. So I poured some warm water into the dry mix, and if you squeeze it and you kind of hear a little bit of a squishy noise and it holds together without dripping water. You don't see any water dripping out of that when I squeeze it. That is the perfect moisture of the potting soil. Okay, the first flower we're going to be starting today is the Columbine. So Columbine is a perennial flower. It's pretty popular, and they come in all sorts of different colors. The reason I have them in this baggie is because they have been stratifying in the fridge for the last month. So we've got two different varieties. We've got a pink one with a yellow center, and then the other one is a Bordeaux Barlow. So I have had these germinate in the fridge before, so let's take a look and see how the seeds look and if any have germinated. I'm not seeing any of these germinate. So these are kind of small, so they're going to be a little bit challenging to get into the potting soil. I've got a toothpick here that may help a little bit, so I'm just going to kind of try and shove these onto the soil here. Now these do require light to germinate, so you don't want to bury these in the seed starting mix because they won't get any light and they won't germinate very well. So we're just going to lightly press them into the soil, and that's really all you need to do. So this variety is the pink with yellow, so I've already got a label made that I had in the fridge. So I'm just going to put that, and I did use my pencil. That's what my go-to was for labeling in years past, because that allows me to reuse the labels and they don't seem to fade. And then we're going to take a look at this one. This is the Bordeaux Barlow, and we're going to do the same thing, see if any of these were germinated. Nope, I don't think so. So both of these varieties I got from Seed Swap on, I think it was Instagram. So we're just going to sweep these in, and when you stratify, if you've never done that before, I use a damp paper towel and then just put it in a Ziploc bag. Now we're just going to kind of lightly press those in. I've also got a little bit of water. This is pre-moistened soil, but it still could use a little bit more moisture, so I'm just going to cover the tops here with a little extra water. And then Columbines require about 70 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit to germinate, and it's only about 60 degrees in this room. So we're going to go ahead and put these on top of a heat mat. I have one shelf set up here in my grow room for my seed start so far, and all I've got on there right now is the microgreens that I started last week, so they're doing pretty good. But we've got them under this Mars Hydro VG80 lights. I've got 2 of the 3 on right now because we don't need the third one just yet. But anything that I'm starting now that requires light to germinate, I'm going to be putting under these lights. And I've also got a heat mat here, so anything that needs heat will have that. I'm going to be sitting, let's see, right now it's set at 79 degrees, which is hotter than I want. The lowest setting that I'm starting is requiring 70 degrees, so that is what I'm going to set it to. And then we've got our Columbines here, so we're going to set those right there. And we've also got a humidity dome that we're going to put over the top to hold in the moisture. So we shouldn't have to water it as often. But we do want to check on these every day or two to make sure they don't get dried out. Now, the Columbine seeds, they say take 21 to 25 days to germinate, which is really quite a long time for most seeds. So these are going to be sitting around waiting to germinate for quite a while. Next up we have Penstemon flowers, and these are another perennial flower. I have not, however, grown these before. These are also ones that require stratification, so these have been in the refrigerator for the last month. Let's see if any of these have germinated. If you look really close, it looks like there might be one or two seeds. They're very tiny, so it's hard to tell. We're going to have to use, these are probably even smaller than the Columbine seeds, so we're going to have to use our toothpick again. This variety is called Rocky Mountain. Now the next variety is called Perry's Penstemon. See if any of these germinated. Ooh, we got a lot more germinated on this one. You can see those little white strings coming out of some of the seeds. Those are all germinated, so that is looking really good. Now let's see if we can get some of these into the potting soil. And I'm just going to lightly tap these down so they have good contact with the soil. Give them a little bit of extra water. We'll put these under the lights with our Columbines. They say the Penstemon requires 70 degrees Fahrenheit to germinate, but as we saw, it can germinate much lower temperatures. But we've got our heat mat set to 70 degrees, so we might as well put them here next to the Columbines. And apparently it takes 14 to 30 days to germinate, but we saw some of those are already germinated, so we shouldn't have to wait too long for them to start growing. Next up we have Snapdragons. So these are another one that requires light to germinate, but they do not require stratification, which is good. So these have not had any time in the refrigerator. So both of these varieties I got from seed swaps. This one is called Apple Blossom. So I'm just going to sprinkle the seeds here on top, and they are very tiny, so you can't even really see them. And then I'm just going to lightly tap that down. And then these are the pink Snapdragons. I'll just show you. That's how small the seeds are. So very, very tiny. I think there's more of these ones. So this one was the pink variety. So we're just going to sprinkle those on top. And we're just going to put the rest in there. Okay, and then we're going to lightly tap those down. I'm not going to cover them with soil, but we are going to put some water here on top. And our labels. And we'll put these under the lights with our other flowers. Snapdragons apparently require 65 degrees Fahrenheit to germinate, but 70 degrees I think is pretty close enough. And one thing I almost forgot to do that we want to make sure we do is add our sensor here so that the heat mat keeps it at 70 degrees. So that is an important step. And our Snapdragon should germinate in 7 to 14 days. We're all done starting flowers for now, so now it's time to start some herbs. We're gonna plant this white sage from Survival Garden Seeds. So these seeds are a little bit bigger than the ones we've been starting. So you can see those a little bit easier. And these, it says that it has pretty low germination. So we're going to put lots of seeds in there in hopes that we get a few to germinate. And these ones also require light to germinate. So we're gonna not put any soil over the top. We're just going, so that's probably plenty of seeds there. Just going to lightly press them into the soil and give them a bit of water. Add our label. and move these over under the lights with the flowers. These are the last seeds we're going to be starting that requires light to germinate. And the white sage requires 70 degrees for germination, which is perfect. And germination should be within 7 to 22 days. We're going to put on our humidity dome. Next up, we're going to be moving on to our beets. I've got 3 different varieties, and I'm going to be starting these in some 6-cell trays. And the reason for that is because the seeds are much larger, they germinate a lot faster. These are newer seeds that shouldn't have any problem germinating. So this one here is Detroit Golden, and golden beets are my absolute favorite variety of beets. They're just so much tastier to me. And I've got this little thing here that I use to just make a little hole, and you want to put these about a ½ inch or so into the soil, and these do not need light to germinate, so that's why we're actually burying them in the seed starting mix instead of leaving them on top like the other seeds we did. And then just cover them up and give them some water. And we can't forget our label. So I'm going to go ahead and do these other 2 trays exactly the same way, and then move them over to our grow shelf. The other 2 varieties I'm going to be growing are these baby beets. So these are about the size of a radish. I haven't grown these before, but I got these in a seed swap. So I'm going to be starting these the exact same way we did the Detroit beets. And then I've also got some Badger flame beets. I don't think I've grown these before, but I've heard really good things about this variety, so I'm excited to try those. All right, we got all 3 trays planted. It's time to move these onto the grow shelf. I have some 10-20 trays here set up on this grow shelf. It's under some lights, but the lights aren't on, so this is where we're going to put our stuff that does not require light to germinate. So we've got our 3 varieties of beets, and we'll be adding some more stuff here shortly. All right, next up we've got our lettuces. I've got 3 different varieties here. This Yeticule is one I haven't grown before. That was a free seed packet I got from Baker Creek this year. And then we've got the Experimental Farm Network's Morton's Secret Mix. So I purchased this, I think it was last year. It says 2022, but I believe I purchased it last year, and it was a really fun mix of mostly variegated varieties of lettuce. So this was a favorite of mine. I didn't see it on their seed catalog this year though, so I'm not sure if they still have it. And then I've also got this Benefine endive that I grew last year, and that was also a really neat one. It's got a really frilly leaves, and it's pretty tasty, not bitter at all. But these are the 3 I'm going to be starting first. I like to do my lettuces in succession, so I usually grow a few different varieties every month or 2 throughout the season, or at least through before it starts getting too hot. So these are the first 3 I'm going to be starting. And I've got these cool 3-cell seed trays. If I'm growing 3 different varieties of something, I like starting them in these 3-cell trays to make it a little bit easier. And with lettuces, I do a bunch of seeds in each cell. So we've got our Morton's Secret Mix here. And I just like to sprinkle a few seeds on top. They're a little bit hard to see, especially these darker seeds. And I'm getting a little bit low on these, so I'm going to try and save seeds from these this year. I'm just going to sprinkle those here on the top. If you can't tell, I didn't fill this soil all the way up to the top. I wanted to leave a little bit of space so I can add more soil to cover the seeds. So they don't need to be planted that deeply, but they do need to be a little bit covered. So that is perfect. That was the Morton's. And then if we look at the Yeticule seeds here, they're a little bit different colored. So these are much easier to see. These are like white seeds. So they're easy to see, and you can tell how many you're actually starting. So that should be plenty. And we'll just cover those up with some soil, pat them down. And then we're also going to add some water on top. And then we'll do the same thing here with the Benefine. Okay, our lettuce is good to go, so we're going to go ahead and move these over to our grow shelf. A last seeds we're going to start today are some spinach. So these are very cold hardy. I started some of these in the fall and they've lasted all winter and it's gotten down into the single digits. So really we should be fine starting these and getting them outside whenever we want. So for these ones, the seeds are a little bit larger, and I'm using my favorite seed starting tray. This is a 6-cell, but the cells are much larger than your typical 6-cell trays. But I'm going to be planting probably 5 seeds in each of these cells. So I've got we'll put our butterfly here, renegade here, and banjo here. So I think I'm going to use a pencil here just to pre-dig our holes. Now the reason I'm planting them in this way is because these are really pretty old seeds, so I'm thinking the germination is going to be pretty low. If these were newer seeds, I would probably use one of those other 6-cell trays and plant 1 seed in each cell. But in this case, I'm not expecting a lot to germinate, so that's why I don't want to waste a lot of soil putting 1 seed in each cell. And we're just going to cover the seeds up. So very similar to how we planted the beet. And then I want to show you this one, this renegade spinach. You could see the seeds are kind of silver colored, and that's because they put some kind of coating on the seed, and I'm not really sure the reason for that. I don't know if it's just so you could see the seeds better or if there's some other reason, but I thought that was kind of interesting. So some of these didn't make it into their holes, so just got to use our pencil to get them into the holes and cover them up. And here's our last one, the banjo. And all 3 of these, because they're in these plastic bags, these are all seeds that I got from seed swaps several years ago. And that is the last tray we're going to be adding over here. No heat mat and no light on these, but we are going to put our humidity dome over the top to help keep the moisture in, and we'll be checking on those every day or so. And we'll give them a little bit of water if we need to. I forgot to mention earlier, I am in zone 8B, so if you are in a higher or lower zone, you may need to start your seeds a little bit later or a little bit earlier. But I'm in Western Washington, and our last frost date is around April 15th or 20th, something like that, middle of April. If you're trying to figure out when to start your seeds, you may want to look up the last frost date in your zip code, and that'll give you an idea of when to start your seeds, because most packets will tell you how many days or weeks before the last frost date when you should start them. And if it doesn't say on the packet, you can easily Google that information and see what timing that is. Now, I would have started my onions today, but unfortunately I haven't received my potting soil that I ordered online. It should have been here today, but it hasn't arrived yet. But I'm going to be starting those as soon as it arrives. And I've got some videos that I've posted a year or 2 ago on how I started those. So if you want to see how that's done, you can see that video. But I don't start those with seed starting mix because for onions, I leave them in that container until they get transplanted outside in probably around April or May, while all the rest of the stuff that I started is going to get repotted into larger containers at some point before I transplant them outside, and that's when I will transfer those to potting soil. I hope you got some ideas on things that you can start growing now, and if you had any question on how to start some of these seeds, I hope I was able to answer them for you. If you have any questions on seed starting, be sure to leave them in the comments. And if there's anything that you think I should be starting this early in February that I haven't mentioned, let me know, and maybe I forgot something. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.